What's up guys, this is Drew. Thanks for tuning in to our latest video in our e-bike roundup. Today we're going to be discussing the Commencal Meta Power 2.9 race. This is a $5,299 retail bike. We spent a lot of time on the 27.5 version of this bike last year, but it was really nice to get the new 29er into the roundup this year and spend some more time on the big wheeled e-bike from Commencal. So really quickly, we'll get into a bit about the specs and then get into how the bike rides. So it's 140 mil rear with a 150 front. Comes with a SRAM GX Eagle drivetrain, SRAM code brakes, RockShox Lyric RC2 fork with a super deluxe coil rear shock. One of the highlights of the build is the Spank VibraCore wheels. It was something that some of our testers thought would be a little bit gimmicky, may not work all that well, but it was definitely felt on the trail. The VibraCore wheels, much like the Spank bars, have a little bit of like a foam insert around them, which helps to dampen vibrations and impact. And obviously on a heavy e-bike where you're gonna be hitting terrain harder rather than floating over the top, it's a nice feature and something that we really noticed on the trail. The cockpit on the Meta Power is Commencal spec. It's their Ride Alpha line. We didn't love the 780 width bars. Not so much the width that was the issue, but the sweep and bend of the Ride Alpha bars, we just don't quite love them, but you know, they get the job done and it's a relatively easy thing to replace down the road. So getting into the performance on the trail, we really liked how this bike rode all around. Obviously the bigger wheels make it efficient, it's fast, it rolls over stuff, it's comfortable with the coil shock out back. So if you're going out for long rides, if you're covering big miles, you like to stay seated over, you know, kind of washboardy, you know, pedals or small, rocky, chunky uphills, this is a pretty sweet bike actually. It's got the Shimano Steps E8000 power plant, so it's a drivetrain and motor that we've really grown used to and like quite a bit out of, you know, the other options out there right now. It's got a good range. It has an easily removable battery, which is good and bad. It doesn't look great, but it's also super easy to remove to charge if you want to get an extra and drop it in for, you know, big rides, or if you're going on a road trip and want to have a couple extra batteries. That's a nice feature. The bike also has a pretty short cockpit. You know, the reach, some of our riders thought it felt a little bit cramped for a size large. Most of our testers were between 5'11" to about 6'3", who obviously is, you know, too large for a large, but you know, we all had to share the same bike. So even our 5'11", 5'10" test riders thought it was a little bit cramped while seated. That's probably in part to the relatively steep C-tube angle, but it also makes the bike climb so well because it puts a lot more power a lot more weight and your center of gravity forward, and allows you to put the power down into the cranks from a more, you know, effective position rather than being laid off the back. When it came time to drop the KS post and hit the downhills, the bike was a lot of fun. It is just over 50 pounds, you know, closer to 51 pounds, so it's a touch on the heavy side, and it rides about like it's 50 pounds. But the coil shock, the suspension tune, you know, the Lyric RC2 fork actually was pretty nice on that bike. It rode well, it stayed planted, it was smooth and supple. You know, all Commencals we've reviewed have really excelled in the chattery terrain, so this bike will just eat up terrain. Some of the testers thought that, you know, the coil spring was a little bit, you know, soft. Like if you're really trying to compress and pop off of, you know, steeper, larger jumps, it kind of would mute that out, and you'd have to work a little harder, go a little faster to clear those. But you know, with a 50-pound e-bike, you're probably not going out to hit your favorite jump trails anyways. So if you're wanting to go out and session downhill trails, hit kind of the burly, you know, all mountain trails and do repeats, it's a killer bike. Has a lot of good features and a relatively affordable. Comparing the $52.99 price point to like the Trek Powerfly, which is pretty close, you know, the Trek has some things going for it that, you know, might put it ahead of the Commencal in a few people's eyes. You know, other riders, you know, might want to go for the Commencal if you know, want something you know, coil sprung, something that you can really kind of thrash on and beat. You got a, you know, easily removable external battery. The Trex battery is still pretty easily removable. It is a Bosch system versus a Shimano, but I think those were kind of our two main bikes in that price point that went head to head with each other. It does have shorter chainstays than the Trek, I believe, which, you know, the Trek's chainstays were a relatively polarizing topic in our review period, but all in all, the Meta Power Race 2.9 is a solid bike. It just, the price with the weight and the performance and ride, it was, you know, a little bit higher price than we thought it should be for getting into the performance and the weight. Solid bike. We can't really critique too much about it. I mean, it's a good all-around bike. It just doesn't excel like some of the other bikes in the shootout do, the way the Norco, Specialized and Pivot really do kind of set the bar ahead. So solid bike all around. If you're looking for something a little more budget, kind of, you know, mid-level price range, they've got bikes that are priced even lower in the, you know, 4,000 range, and those might be worth checking out. Thanks for tuning in. If you've got any further questions, feel free to leave them below, and we'll see you on the trails. Thanks, guys.